also tomorrow on 365 Sports. We're now joined by Tim Brando, Fox Sports, with Craig and Paul, David Smoke. And Tim, how'd you shoot? How'd you play?
I was awful. I was terrible. Worst round of golf I've played all year.
Well,
but you know what? I got to play, and my course has been closed because it's been flooded. The Bat 9 goes up against Wallace Lake, and it crested a little over a week ago, and now we're pumping the water out. There's how do I put it? We have a lot of casual water on the Bat 9.
Yeah. You've got a few non-man-made lakes, Mother Nature-made lakes and ponds now.
Yeah, but somehow I was able to get through it. It was, it was just a day when there were times I was like, have I even played this game before? It was that bad. and I think I wound up with like a 92, and I don't think I've shot over 90 in 3 years. But it was great. I played.
Well,
so it was great.
Glad you could join us. We appreciate your time. Tim, you may have heard the story that Brett Yormark, the Big 12 Conference USA, might be looking for some extra money, and the possibility of naming rights to conferences. There's even private equity, of course, that's been thought about. Your thoughts about that?
Well, that's breaking news to me. I do know this. I'm not sure if you caught some of what Mike Oresco said, the retired American Athletic Conference commissioner, who's a dear friend of mine, discussing how sad he felt it was that the other conferences, about 100 schools, just felt like they could not battle the Big Ten and the SEC, and they accepted what he felt was, a bad deal for them moving forward as it relates to, the 12-team college football playoff, that the money received for those schools that, it's great to have access, but if you have access but not the same financial arrangement, how good really is it? Those types of things. He used the term Darwinian.
Mm-hmm.
And, boy, I hate hearing that. But I'll say this about Mike. He was a fighter when he was the commissioner of the American, and the Big 12 came after him strong, took most of his really good teams after he, as a leader and of the best really non-Power 5 conference for a long time. I mean, UCF and the plight of teams like Houston when they had their run, and certainly the run of Cincinnati, those were, programs that he helped elevate at a time when they were breaking away from the Big East Conference and reforming and starting their own league with their own name. And he went through a lot of litigation to get financial, really a tremendous infusion of money from the Big East, solely so they could hold on to the name of their conference and keep their basketball tournament in New York at Madison Square Garden. So he did a great job for them. And so when he speaks now, it's totally objective. He's not worried about what other presidents of schools are saying. But what he's saying, basically, is a lot of the presidents, ADs, as well as commissioners of some of the non-Power 5s, just sort of cowered to some extent when the college football playoff conversation got going. He felt that they had more power than they thought, and it's a shame that they didn't fuse together and think positively to force the Big Ten and the SEC to give them more. To the extent that Brett Yormark was not in his position, and he wasn't, Big 12 is in a much more solvent position than the AAC was. But let's face it, some of their best teams are the ones they accrued from the AAC. And I think that Yormark is a forward-thinking guy. I'm high on him. Oresco's high on him. And I think that the chances are that they're going to continue to fight to be big, so-called, if you want to call it, hey, we're bigger than that. We want to be bigger than that. And over the next couple of years, we're going to see this thing, the first 2 years of this old TV contract, move forward with the conferences getting the payouts that they're getting. But it's a whole new ball game when that new TV contract is enacted, and fans need to know that doesn't start until 2026.
Tim, when you hear private equity and mentioned in Congress with college football and them coming in, Dennis Dodd reported today that Brett Yormark has met with at least a firm out of Luxembourg that would invest. And I know not all private equity is bad, and not all there's good firms out there that go in and invest and make things better. But when you're starting to take foreign money for something that they just in Luxembourg, they don't have college football. They don't have college basketball. It's not what they do. And not to say these guys aren't worldly people. They have a lot of money, but they're bottom liners. And this is just kind of a different thing. It makes me a little uneasy.
Sure, I understand that. To a certain extent, maybe what Brett is counting on, and I think this is scary, he's counting on maybe this settlement, that they're coming up with being good enough to allow, Charlie Baker's thought process that this is extending the NCAA's livelihood for 10 years, and that there's somehow, some way going to be able to get congressional help. I just don't see that. I just don't. I think to count on congressional help at this point, given what we know about the politics of this country and the polarized society that we're in, I have a hard time. But like I said, Brett is more of a global guy who has contacts and thinks big, well beyond us. And Smoke, Paul, guys, I have to admit what I don't know here.
Yeah.
Maybe he knows what we don't. And that's why guys like Brett Yormark are in the positions they're in. I do know this. The thing I like about him is he will not stand for people to continue to say it's the Big Ten and the SEC and then everybody else. And that's what I like about Brett Yormark. He's like, no. We will compete. We'll continue to compete. And he knows that he's got, from a competitive standpoint, arguably the best of the four power conferences. He's got the best top to bottom, the best depth of any of those conferences. You say what you want about the lack of market size, the money not being the same as it is, and being dwarfed by both the Big Ten and the SEC. But at the same time, there are going to be more competitive games in the Big 12 Conference, games that will have the interest of a lot of fans that aren't in the Big 12 but have to keep up with the teams that are going to make the top 12. We're going to have more competitive and great close games that are stem to stern more competitive than any of the games that you watch in either the Big Ten or the SEC. Like I'm looking at that first Friday game, by example, a game that very frankly, there's a good chance I'll have the chance to call. I don't know. I have no way of knowing what Fox is going to do with my schedule as yet. I'll know more within the next 3 weeks to a month from now when we get to our college football seminar in mid-July. But that K-State Arizona game looks like a game that I could very easily be calling. That's a hell of a game, and should be a very competitive game with a newcomer coming into the league that has every reason to believe that they could win it. And Kansas State, who, by virtue of Oklahoma and Texas leaving, I think along with, K-State, TCU, and Baylor and Oklahoma State, those four schools that are left from the original Big 12, they've got to be thinking we're the new frontier of the Big 12. Okay? There's no reason for us, without OU and Texas in this league, for us not to believe that we're the big kahunas. All right? And here comes Arizona, Colorado, and Utah saying, well, wait a minute, there's a ton of really good games. And that Friday night game at Kansas State, which is the first of that package on the 13th, I think it is, of September, that's a hell of a game. I mean, a hell of a game.
I think that, there's everybody that's remaining in the Big 12, there's about 5 to 7 teams. It's going to be interesting, Tim, on can anyone take grab the conference and run with it. I don't know if anyone's good enough to do that consistently like Oklahoma did for many years, and Texas had their runs, but they till last
let
year.
Let me give you the two teams that I think are poised. One from the Big 12 and one not. Okay? The one not is Utah. Utah comes into the league probably from a competitive standpoint, in as good a position as they've ever been in.
Mm-hmm.
With what? A quarterback that's been there for 8 years?
He's been 6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in there, right? And they've got some very influential games early in the season. And the team within the Big 12 that comes in, I think, in the best possible position is Kansas State.
Yeah.
Even minus Will Howard. Will Howard wasn't going to be the starting quarterback even if he had stayed there. They know that. And they've got energy and juice. And it's a program that has very rarely, if ever, underwhelmed us. They've always lived up to whatever the expectations of that program were going to be. And I don't see any reason for that to change.
Tim Brando, Fox Sports with his 365 Sports. Tim, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's my point. I just think the league is in really good shape with the confluence of teams that are coming in that bring energy and freshness and enthusiasm. The whole Dion thing we haven't gotten into, but that's going to be great, especially early. Remember, Colorado last year, before they got banged up and the depth factor really hurt them, they were the number one story in college football. I don't see any reason why, if they can stay healthy, they're going to have more depth. They're going to be fun. They're going to attract a lot of attention. But of those teams coming in from that league, it's Utah that is the most battle-tested and has been the best for the longest period of time. And I think and you can make the case that Kansas State is sort of the old regime's version of Utah. Okay? They have to get beaten. They never beat themselves. They are always overlooked as one of the top 10 teams in the country, and yet they've been a top 10 team for a long time. And in the case of K-State, you could say, all right, maybe they had a few years where they were down, but overall, okay, since Snyder was there, they've been pretty much a constant as a top 15, top 20 team that people recognize as being very competitive. They just are in a they're not a ratings monster. Neither is Utah. Colorado is a ratings monster. And TCU can be, all right, because of what they accomplished just a couple of years ago. And I don't think that program is going to stay where they were a year ago. I think what happened a year ago was an aberration. Your guys are the ones that I think are the biggest trump cards. You know, how quickly does Baylor get back to being Baylor again? I think they may hold the key to just how great the perception of the Big 12 may be, because when Aranda's team is really, really good, then the Big 12, I think, takes on a lot more substance around the rest of the country.
Tim, we released our rankings day by day the last 3 days, and I'm curious, as someone who you do national rankings and things like that, everybody believes that we all in this business hate their team if we don't say something nice about them. Is there a group of fans who comes for you in particular? For me and Smokey the last 2 days, it's been Oklahoma State, because we had the gall to rank them 4th.
Out of 16
Out of
teams,
16.
by the way. Yeah.
Well, Oklahoma State's fan base believes, and I understand this, that, you know, through the years when everyone was talking about Oklahoma, Texas, Texas was not, over a 15, 20-year period, nearly as consistent as Oklahoma State was. So, I mean, you look back at the number of Big 12 championships that went through either Stillwater or Norman, and how many times it came down to Bedlam to determine who the Big 12 champion was. So I get some of that, and they feel like with Oklahoma finally out of the league, they're no longer little brother in the conference. They ought to be the man. Yeah, they should be the man. So I kind of understand that to some extent. I do a top 12 to start the year. This year will be a top 12. My top 10 is what I used to do when we had 4 teams in the playoffs. Now it's going to have to be 12. But make no doubt, the program that always got the most angry with me was Alabama, because if I didn't have Alabama number one every year, then I was just a tout for every other team in the country besides Alabama. So this year, I'm not sure Alabama makes my top 12, so I'll really piss them off.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's brilliant marketing for you to get some reaction. But I know one of the things that
it's part of my brand.
Yeah,
it's part of my brand.
Yeah,
pissing off Alabama is part of my brand.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tim Brando, Fox Sports, with us on 365 Sports. How much do you kind of almost crave just getting into talking nothing but football rather than so much of the legal, all the other stuff that seems like it's taken up the offseason?
Well, this is Father's Day weekend. We've got the College World Series, which I love, the U.S. Open, which I love. I get a little nostalgic whenever it's Father's Day because of my relationship with my dad, but also those two events. And we don't talk about them nearly enough. But I will also tell you that once I go through my second vacation, which we just had our first in May with our kids over Memorial Day down at the Redneck Riviera in Orange Beach, Terry and I will do another trip in late July down into the Panhandle. And when I'm there, I'm going to be reading my Phil Steele magazine, which I know is out, and I should be receiving mine any day now. And I'll be all into it. And when I come back and probably visit with you guys sometime in early or mid-August, I'll be fired up. At that point, I'll know where our games are going to be. I have a hunch that these Friday games are going to be, in my sights, a good number of them, not all of them, but a good number of them. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about standalone games with more eyeballs and the potential of maybe having a few Saturdays off so I can either go to a game with my family or spend the weekend at home watching everybody else work, if that's the case. But we need to get to games because all of the negativity is centered around all things off the field. And it gets worse with every passing year until they figure out how they're going to run their business. And they have not figured it out. The litigation has gotten in the way. The lawsuits that are out there that still need to be taken care of. The conference commissioners who for whatever reason, want to listen to Charlie Baker need to figure out whether they're going to or not. Just because they got this settlement, for Charlie Baker and the NCAA to somehow believe that that's the be-all and end-all, and so college football should be in lockstep with him about getting congressional help. No. Hell no. What happened here with that deal cemented the fact that the NCAA will be around longer than the 2 years I thought they would be, but only because they have the NCAA men's basketball tournament, for no other reason. I think it's a mistake for the Sankeys and the Petites of the world to suddenly believe that now, because they've negotiated this settlement on NIL and the conference is all bought in to taking care of that this somehow means that they're not going to break away from the NCAA. They better be thinking otherwise. They better be thinking that the future is in collective bargaining with the players and that they're going to have to take care of it that way, because getting congressional support on anything close to college football right now, until the Republicans have total control of the Senate and the House, it's not going to happen. These dweebs, these pencil-headed geeks out on the left coast and right coast are not going to let it happen. So get over it, move on, and start running your business, and stop listening to a politician who, albeit as a Republican in a blue state, did a hell of a job. I'm not buying that he can suddenly get everyone in Congress to play along with the NCAA. This is still a neo-colonial outfit that is run by people who are disconnected from people that have been in college athletics forever. They've never gotten it, and they still don't get it. And as long as they continue to listen to these presidents and buy in and allow them to do this, we're going to keep going down this slippery slope. College basketball needs to stay with the NCAA. All the other sports need to stay with the NCAA, the non-revenue producing sports. But college football needs to get as far away from the National Collegiate Athletic Association as they possibly can, even with this settlement.
Tim, enjoy your summer. Enjoy that second vacation. I put a note in my calendar to get in touch with you sometime in late July, early August to get you back on the
There you
show.
go.
Sound good?
You got
Thank you, buddy.
You got it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I was late today.
No.
I really am.
Hey, no. I'm not going to ever get upset when someone's playing golf.
Hey,
ever.
Tim, by the way, I'm going to text you after the show. We want to send you something that one of our sponsors gave us.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
We'll get something to you, man. Thank you so much for your time. I'm glad you had a chance. Enjoy Father's Day weekend, the Open, and the College World Series.
Thank you, fellas.
Thank
and by
you.
the way, sucking at golf is still a good thing.
Tim Brando, Fox Sports with us. Love the segments with him, and we appreciate